Welcome to Dicta, your weekly dose of law school and bar exam info. I'm Carrie Ann.
And I'm Puyan, and we're the co-founders of Vinco.
And today we're going to talk about some things that we wish we knew when we were starting up our own practice, or some things we've learned along the way about being new business owners and new attorneys. So the first tip we want to talk about is planning ahead. And I know, right, surprise, surprise, I'm talking about planning and organizing because that's my thing. But having a plan is so important before opening your own law firm. And we had a plan, right? What was our plan?
Well, you could call it a plan. Yeah, I mean, our plan, in retrospect, maybe was not as detailed or didn't account for every contingency as we would have preferred. But, yeah, our plan basically accounted for any foreseeable costs in the near future. We also accounted for any software and hardware we will need, like laptops, case management software, a Google Drive account with email with a domain name. I mean, the domain and website is a whole separate video altogether, but these are costs and expenses that you should anticipate. What else?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the plan being maybe not as detailed as it should have been, it consisted of a yellow sheet of legal paper that Puyan kept in his wallet
In my wallet, yeah.
like
so,
6 months.
So anytime Carrie Ann asked, what did we say? I would just take out my wallet and like unravel this this yellow piece of paper, and I'd be like, "This is what we said."
Yeah.
So, you might want to keep it in electronic copy.
Yeah. If we could do it again, we might. And I would wake up in the middle of the night having anxiety, like, "Oh my God, that's our entire business plan."
And by the way, I've since lost that piece of paper, but we've put some systems in place since then.
We're doing okay now. So the moral of the story was, however maybe minimal our planning was, we definitely would have been dead in the water without some planning.
Yeah, we barely made it with the plan at first. I mean, we're doing well now, but we had to learn a lot as we got here.
Yeah, so just coming up with the plan would be step one. And the second thing we wanted to talk about was systems, right? So that was sort of like your first system, was creating the plan of opening up. But then, and you deal a lot more with the day-to-day of this stuff than I do.
With regard to systems, it might be the most important thing that a business owner can create, systems and processes. It's really what separates a one-man show. Everyone's seen those solo practitioners who are 60 years old. They've been doing it for like 35 years. They're happy. I mean, some of them are happy. They're relatively successful, but they never scaled it up. They never turned it into like an organization. They're just a one-man show, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's your preference. But we, from the beginning, wanted to create something that can expand and can self-replicate, so that there are systems in place. If the work is created through marketing, we have systems, we have people we can bring in to do it, delegate tasks, which Carrie Ann taught me about, and now I've internalized as something we need to do.
Indeed.
Without systems, you can't grow. And without systems, you're going to miss deadlines, you're going to default on obligations. It's really, and you will have more stress.
Yeah. And I think pretty much everything we've said so far is circling around this bigger idea of treating your law firm like a business
Absolutely.
First, right? Because that's what it is. First and foremost, a business.
You're a business owner first and an attorney second. I would say I spend more than half of my time running the business and maybe a third of my time doing actual legal work, which is, a little disturbing now that I think about it. But, I get to my office, I have to respond to like 30 emails from a marketing event that I did or like a presentation that I gave. And before I know it, it's 12 o'clock. Then I have like 3 consultations, and before I know it, the day's over, and I haven't even begun to write briefs or respond to requests from courts, and like it becomes really overwhelming. But the point is, it's a business. You're a business owner first and an attorney second, and you really need to treat it like that.
Because it will really cripple your ability to expand if that is where you want to go with your practice, if your main focus is always just on the legal work. You're never going to be able to grow because you won't have those systems in place, and you will just be an attorney doing legal work forever. And like Brianne said, there's nothing wrong with that if that is what you want. It's more about being intentional about where you're going with your business and not just letting it happen to you.
Absolutely. And even if you want to stay a solo practitioner, you know, some of the happiest attorneys I know are solo practitioners. They're in complete control.
Hey.
I mean,
whatever. The point is, do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Just do it on purpose. Whatever it is that you want, just put the thought in and do it intentionally. And something that could have set us off on maybe even a better track was having a business mentor going into it.
Absolutely.
So we had all of the legal resources we could have wanted and more. We were affiliated with a law school. We had good relationships with other immigration practitioners.
Right.
We had ALL. Like we were set on the legal ground. If we didn't know something, we knew where to find the answer.
Yeah.
But in terms of like how to balance our checkbook or how to or what systems we needed, that has just been trial and error for us.
Exactly. So like if I want to write a motion for a judge I'm unfamiliar with, I could just shoot out an email to a couple people who I've helped out in the past. I've covered their cases, and they'll send me samples and they'll answer all my questions, and it's pretty straightforward. But you know, when it comes to marketing, and this is something I'm still learning, there aren't that many people out there who will tell you, okay, use this service, or for your industry, newspaper marketing is a waste of money. Should I put all my time into Facebook social media or social media marketing, which doesn't cost that much, depending on how you approach it, may not cost that much. I mean, for my specific industry, I practice immigration law. I've noticed that instead of spending hundreds of dollars on like paid leads or Google AdWords or things like that, it's much more cost effective for me to just plan with local community organizations and give presentations, just like community outreach presentations. They cost me a few hours plus whatever I pay for an interpreter to help out and like assist with the presentation. But these result in a couple clients, and you know, it cost me a couple hours, but I got a good return on my investment. And the returns pan out for years into the future because people really trust you when you give these types of presentations. But just make sure if you do that, you comply with your jurisdiction's ethical requirements.
He's really big on ethical requirements, which is great because that's really important.
It's traumatizing.
But the moral of the story is no one told us how to do that. We didn't sort of have someone guiding us through that process, and now we've started to develop those relationships and have really seen an impact on our business since we've brought a mentor on board to help us out. So I have one more tip, and this one is really like near and dear to my heart, and that is to remember that everything will take more time and money than you think it will, and that's okay, right? So there's a big difference between being stupid with your time and money and just being patient with yourself when you realize there's a learning curve to doing this.
So just to add on to that point, which is possibly the best point you're going to hear in this video, when you create a financial plan before you get started, you need to come up with some number that you need to save. Like for example, let's say we saved $3,000 to $5,000 to start our practice, and that money can go toward monthly payments for our practice management software, buying us laptops, whatever software we need, memberships with local organizations like for me, American Immigration Lawyers Association costs like $400 a year for membership. Things like that. You really want to create a breakdown of all your immediate expenses and your expenses that you may incur during the year. Take that number and add a lot of money to it because it's going to cost you more. I would say 50% more.
Yeah, certainly
at
double
least.
it.
Just you should have a buffer, like some sort of safety net. And at the so what we did is we came up with our number. We saved up that amount, and then we got a credit card that had like 0% financing for a year. So we figured we'll just put as many of our expenses as possible on this credit card since we don't have to pay interest for a year. Like for example, our laptops. In this way, we do have the cash ready for it. We've already anticipated it. but we can take those expenses and pay 1/12 of them each month. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Am I being clear?
That totally makes sense, and it really worked for us.
Yeah, so we can keep, so like, let's say we have that $5,000 cash that we anticipated we'll need, but we still keep the cash and we put that $5,000 in expenses on a credit card, and we'll pay 1/12 of that credit card each month. So we still have a bunch of cash left over as a buffer just in case an emergency happens.
Yeah, or like an emergency being you don't make any money that month and you need to eat.
Exactly.
It really helped us get through our first year by using that specific system. So there's a lot of information. Just to recap some of these points. If you're thinking of opening your own law firm right out of law school or soon thereafter, tip number 1 was to start with a plan. Tip number 2 was to implement systems and to have a process for everything you do. Tip number 3 is to find a mentor.
Yep.
Tip number 4, you're a business owner first and a lawyer second.
Absolutely.
And tip number 5 can really be summarized with be patient with yourself and the process of being a business owner. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.